Okay, so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what I think about when I'm drawing expressions. We'll cover a little bit of caricature and that sort of thing in here, but the biggest thing to remember when creating expressions, a lot of people struggle with this, is the simpler, the better. When you can make an expression very, very simple, it's going to read much more clear. And then that's when, obviously, clear is what you want. You want a clear expression of emotion from whatever character you're trying to do. The biggest mistake I see a lot of people do is, they get a lot of different things going on in the face, and what that does is it kind of jumbles everything up, and it takes away the clarity, and therefore, as a result, the emotion doesn't come through as strongly as possible. So I want to go over a whole bunch of different expressions and talk to you about what I think about, how I do it, and some of the tricks I've picked up along the way through the years working at Disney. And I'm just going to hit some main expressions, and we'll just go ahead and I'm just going to use a generic head, something I'll just make up here on the spot. But why don't we go ahead and dive in, and let me grab the right brush. And so first things first, I want to get everything very simple. And let's talk about, actually I want to back up from that. I want to talk about this. If I draw this, that's happy. If I draw this, that's mad, right? If I draw whatever, let's do this. Surprise. Now, I know this looks really corny, but the reason I want to show you this is this is actually a lesson that I got way back in the early days of my, back in the beginning of my animation days, when I was working with an animator named Mark Henn, and he was fantastic. And he sat down, I was having some problems with expressions, and he sat down and he drew these for me. And he says, Aaron, there's a reason why these read so clearly, and that's because they're so simple. They are an instant read. And when you can apply these to your actual characters, then that clarity is going to come through that much stronger. Okay, so keeping that in mind, I want to go ahead and we'll go ahead and jump in and start doing some real drawing, and then we'll come back and refer to these. All right, so keep that in mind. I always go back to that. I always go, even 30 years later, I go back to that thinking because it keeps my expressions clear. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let's just draw a happy character. So once again, starting with my simple shapes, and we'll get into, we'll start when we get further down the line and I start talking about, actually when we get into drawing our characters, we're going to talk about shape language and arrangement of shapes and that sort of thing. But I always start with a ball like this. And let's put his eye line kind of low. And we'll give him some nice cheeks. Notice I'm thinking about form. I'm thinking about the form of the character. There's going to be a break here, like so. I always think about that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm going to come in here. There's the eye line. And if we do happy, I'm going to do this. I'm thinking about that eye going around, sitting on that ball, going around the skull. Let's put a nose. Let's put this nose right here. Put the little nostrils on there. Keeping it very simple. And what's happy? Well, happy, let's just do the happy face. Remember, when I turn this on, here's our happy face right here. Well, I'm thinking about that as I'm drawing. So what happens when we smile? And this is what I want you guys to think about. I'm going to bring that mouth will crunch, it scrunches up right in here, right? And what's going to happen as a result of that? Well, that squashes the cheeks up, right? So we're going to push, I'm just going to do this. We're going to push that right up. And notice it all kind of originates right in the corner of this by the nose, like so. I'm going to do the same here. And so what happens as a result of that? Well, that pushes some of that fat in the face right up in there. There we go. And we'll put a chin in here. Now, once again, looking at this, if we want to do just a pretty typical happy face, I'm going to put those eyebrows up. And I'm going to keep that pretty simple. But I'm thinking about perspective, right? Here's the eyebrow working this way. Here's the eyebrow working this way. The other thing I think about on a character, even if it's something very simple like this, and here's that nose ridge coming down, is there's a mass. And these really help with expression. If you can think about there being a mass here on the brow, being able to move that brow. Now there's hard bone that you want to think about being underneath whatever character you're doing, but there's muscle that you can move up and down over the top. And so I think about that as I'm drawing. And so, and I keep it simple. Notice how everything is staying very simple. I'm keeping that silhouette simple. I'm keeping the eyes simple. Get those eyelashes coming in there. Now let's go ahead and draw some pupils in there, iris. There we go. Like so. So already you can see I've got very simple, I just went boom, like this, thinking about the masses, keeping those eyes, you know, and we've got this thing happening right here. I want to stay in that happy face, that iconic happy face, as much as possible and apply it to this form. So now, keeping that in mind, and hopefully you've already gone through the anatomy or you understand anatomy enough that I'm applying that to our nose. You know, I went over noses in the other videos and how they fit, the whole shape of the skull. You know, this character here, you know, would have a caricatured skull. But you know, there's sockets right in here. You know, the eye sockets would be right in there. Right into that little nose would be right in here. So it's all it's kind of a creepy looking thing, but it's a very caricatured kind of little skull that I think about underneath all of that. Okay? And then if, you know, we can do hair on another video, but I'll throw it in here real quick. And once again, keeping things very simple. Here we've got a little boy. Let's throw in some, maybe he's got some big ears there. I'm thinking about shape. I'm thinking about form. Okay? This has all got form. Let's talk about the eyes a little bit, since that will help with your expression. I always think about all of this unit, the eyebrows, the eyes themselves, all of this as a single unit. So think of it like this, all the way up into the eyebrows and up into the masses of that meat there on the forehead that I was talking about earlier. So if you think about an eye like this, and this is something I learned from Glenn Keane, the animator I worked with that taught me animation when I was younger. He was a great animator. If you think about this shape, think about it as these radiating circles, okay? So here we've got an eye, okay? This is a pretty common comic eye. You know, you have this a lot in a lot of comic characters. I'm going to move it over just a little bit. Here we go. And then you've got an eyebrow. Well, I always think of it as kind of this radiating, think of this shape right here of the eye, and now just to kind of increase it. Like so. And then throw your eyebrow in there. Now this is going to scrunch up and down. We're going to get into that on some of the, when we get into the other expressions. But I think about this as I draw. And we'll throw in maybe the upper lid being squashed in there. And then when you get into the meat of the eye, that mass of the brow, which I'm just going to roughly indicate in here, Well, that, if you drew it down in, that kind of radiates out too. So you think of these kind of radiating circles or ovals, or however you want to describe those, coming out from this bottom plane in the eye, right here in the bottom. I always think about that, and that's what I move. So everything kind of moves together at varying degrees. And that way that expression keeps its clarity, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and shrink this up. Let's just move that right over there. Okay. Oh, actually, before I do that, once something's roughed in like this, then I can lighten it up. I want to reiterate, I keep everything very rough at this stage. Don't worry about making a scribbly drawing as long as you're finding the lines that you need to find, because that's where the real work comes in. So once this is done, I can come back in and I can, whether I'm working on paper, I can throw another piece of paper over the top of it. You might be doing that at home right now. Or if you're working digitally like this in Photoshop like I am, you can just lighten up that layer. And then I come in and I can just come in, and now I can kind of sit back, put my music on if I'm listening to music, and just relax and really kind of find the pleasing, get make the drawing pretty, basically. I can come in here. There we go. Maybe put a bottom lip in, like so. And I want to make this feel like this is all connected into a mass. I'm thinking about that form. There we go. There. That meat is being the cheek, the meat of the cheek. It's being squashed up. And this is, I'm going to show you another trick. I do this all the time, and you'll find mistakes, because I can see a mistake right now, and I want to see if you guys can see it. As I'm tying this down, I see a mistake that I did with the expression in that rough. So something I always do, some of you might be aware of this, but if you're not, this is a very good trick. You can do this with your regular drawings if you're drawing on paper, or you can do it digitally. But I always flip my drawings. So image, rotation, horizontal. So I'm flipping the drawing. If you have a mirror and you're working traditionally, just go look in the mirror. So now the reason I do that is it makes mistakes kind of glare. When you flip it, all of a sudden you can see mistakes that you didn't see before. And if I turn this off, if I look at this, it's not so bad, but this eye, it looks like it's really out of place. It looks like it's not set back far enough, and it's sitting in a weird plane. But if I take my lasso tool, or if you're just drawing traditionally, you can erase. And I'm going to hit move. And we're just going to move it back to a place that feels right. I want to set it back into the skull just a little bit more. Now that starts to feel right. I do this all the time. I'm always making adjustments by flopping that drawing. Okay, flop the drawings as much as you can, and you'll always see little things that you can adjust here and there. It's a great habit to get into. I used to do it when I had paper. Even if when I'd finish a key, let's say I was working on Lion King, and I would finish a key of Nala. I would finish up that drawing, and then I'd hold it up to the light, turn it over, and then see how it looked. And if it didn't look right, I would flip it back over and make my adjustments. I do this all the time. Even 40 years later, I'm not 50 yet, 40 years later of drawing, I still do this. We all make mistakes, and this is a great habit to get into, to find those mistakes. So here, I'll deselect it. That looks better. That feels like it's sitting in the skull the right way now. And now I can flip it back, and now that feels a lot better. So I can turn this back on, and now I can come back in and start to lay that in now. See, there we go. So now I've got something that feels right. So I just want to reiterate, think about those real common basic icons when you're drawing expression. I think about them all the time, and we'll get on to the next one. But I just want to show you, once you lay that in real quickly, then you're able to sit down and just kind of relax. You know, all the hard work is done in that rough version. And then you can, you know, once you get everything, that's where you know, it's laying out the framework. It's getting all the stuff ready to do that pretty drawing. And that's what we're trying to do now. So now I can come in and make everything nice and pretty. There we go. We got the scrunched up brow there. There, just like so. And I won't go through the whole thing because I want to get into the next expression. There. And now in just a matter of minutes, we're able to sit down and crank out a drawing. There we go. Get that ear anatomy in there. Like so. Okay? So there's happy. Remember, I'm thinking about anatomy. I'm thinking about those simple, iconic expressions. I'm thinking about these guys right here. Always think about these guys to keep your expression simple. All right? Let's go ahead. I'm going to shrink this up. Now I'm going to shrink it up. Okay, let's go ahead and let's keep that there. I'm going to create a new layer. All right, so let's go ahead and let's draw angry. So now we've got the same character. Let's just draw him from a different angle. Okay. But once again, thinking about simple shape. Let's do him from this, kind of looking towards us, but still slightly 3/4. Remember those, I want to get that form. Now there's always this here. Maybe those ears are sticking out. We can put those out there like so. Get that nose in here. But now, okay? So now I'm thinking about, all right, anger. Now, how are we going to do anger? Well, once again, keeping these guys in mind. Let's look at this guy right here. Well, you want those furrowed brow and you want that pouty mouth. Well, let's do that. But now we're going to add form to it. We're going to put it onto a character, and we're going to think about anatomy. Hopefully, like I said, you've gone through the anatomy course, and so we're going to think about all the different muscles and things that are attached. And I always think about that. So if I'm scrunching my brow like this, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to get some scrunching. I have lots of furrowed brow right here. And so that's what I think about. But I'm going to keep it simple. Let's pull this down, just like, put it right down just like that. Already he looks angry. But now he's pushing some of that meat, and we're going to scrunch up in here. There we go. Let's put those eyebrows right down in here. Simple, simple, simple. And we're going to think about these eyes. Now he's not scrunching up. You know, he's not smiling, so we're not going to get the cheeks scrunched up underneath. But, you know, when you furrow your brow, it comes down over the top of your eyes. So this really helps. This is getting that brow over the eyeball like that really helps with the expression. Look how angry he looks already, and we really haven't really done anything. And then we're just going to draw that pouty mouth. Whoops. Let's get that chin in there. So what do I want to do? I want to flip it. And see if there's any adjustments I want to make. I want to pull this in just a little bit more. There we go. constantly flipping my drawings to make sure I'm hitting perspective right. Maybe he's got, he's scrunching up his nose in here. But it's all meant to mimic this, that shape right there. And we'll get those irises right there like so. I'm gonna shave that off just a hair. There we go, like that. I'm gonna pull that ear back a little bit. So you can see changes that you want to make when you flip that drawing. Like so. See there? Let's flip it back. And what do we have? Remember we got this meat in here. I want to pull this, thinking about that brow. There. You don't have to have, if you put too much detail, especially in a kid like we're doing now, if we do too much in it ages him. You don't want to have too many lines, and I find myself kind of doing too many lines right now. But here we go, get that nose in there. And so thinking, once again, I'm gonna be a broken record, thinking about this icon, boom, boom, like so. I apply it to the expression, there we go, and I end up with something that feels clear. You don't want to overcomplicate your expressions. That's very, very important. So now, and let's actually real quick, I'm gonna go ahead and let's throw some hair in here. Thinking about the form of the hair, how it's going to fall. There. Maybe he's got his shoulders scrunched up a little bit. There, looks something like that. So here, just using a very basic character, able to throw in a very quick expression and get it very clear, and you can get it appealing. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down, and once again, just to reiterate, by doing so, now I can come in and start tying things down. And now I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe he's got a little bit more, there's a little bit more skin in there. I can have some fun with maybe some of the details in there. There we go. Let's go ahead and get this eye drawn in. And here you can see I'm tapering the line. I'm adding a little bit of interest and getting that to feel, maybe there's a little eyelash, a little darkness back there. That helps with the expression a little bit. I'm always thinking, at the very least, if you take anything away from this lesson, take away that you need to keep your expressions simple. Keep them simple. If you can do that, then you're making them clear. I'm going to add there's a little highlight on his eye. There we go. And we'll put the highlight here. Actually put it down. Oh, I'm going to come in and highlight it with white. Because I'm going to show you a little trick here once I get all this done. There we go. So come in here. There's that nose, thinking about the anatomy of the nose and the nostrils. And like I said, hopefully you've either know your anatomy well, or you've gotten the anatomy course, because it'll really help when it comes to thinking about this stuff. And let's just draw that scrunchy mouth. Now, the other thing too I want you to think about is once you get these types of expressions down, the very basic, anger and happy and sad that we're going to do, then there's little nuances, there's little changes that you can make here and there that will change the feel of the expression very subtly here and there, that you can start getting into kind of those very nuanced expressions. We'll talk about those later as well. I'll throw in that chin, thinking about that. So once again, just by thinking very, very simply and thinking about form, I'm pulling a whole bunch of things together at this stage, at this point. When I'm doing expressions like this, I'm thinking about form. I'm thinking about the anatomy that's making that form. Think about that ball and then apply that ball to a skull underneath and how the features work. And then I think about that expression and the clarity of that expression, that simple shape. The simple, the iconic shapes, the pouty mouth with the scrunched eyes, or the big eyebrows with the upturned mouth, making for a happy face. Think about all of that. And here you can see I'm going very quickly to indicate the hair, and I'm just doing a big mass. I always think in big shapes. Think about big shapes when you're doing your character designs. And this applies to a lot of drawing in general, but especially in character, when you're drawing character, think about those shapes. Because when you can think simply like that and not noodle, then you're going to get into clarity. And clarity is ultimately what you want. So there's a little kid who's angry, having a tantrum. But once again, I'm going to turn this on again. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this up. So thinking about this kid right here and this guy right here, you can see the similarity. I'm thinking about simple, iconic faces, and that's what I'm doing there. So, okay, so why don't we go ahead and do another one? Here's surprise. Why don't we go ahead and do somebody that's surprised? Let's start with that ball again. But now you'll notice, because I'm doing surprise, you notice how it's not a perfect ball, it's a slight oval. And you'll see why. Let's have them kind of looking this way now. Okay? Even to this day, I always draw my construction lines. I always start out with these very basic shapes. And one of the things I'm going to talk about later on is making your characters animatable. And what I mean by animatable is I want you to put together simple shapes that are the underlying structure of that character. And then, because when you can do that, then they become animatable. You can think about your character in those simple shapes, and it becomes much easier to move them in space, to think about those forms. And then all you're doing is really adding details onto the top. So I'm taking, this ball and the part of the, his face down here, and just kind of stretching it, and I'm keeping it very simple. And here, I'm thinking about, okay, here's that, if you think about this form coming up into that part of the head, like so, keeping it very, very simple. Once again, we want a big open face right here. Now, if I had drawn this, what I should have done, let me erase this. Let me erase that. What I should have done is drawn him like this. Whoops. There we go. Draw him like this. And then really, now we're stretching that expression. We're pushing it open. And that pushes the feel for that expression. Pushes that surprise element. So once again, let's come back here. I've got the eyes on here. I'm going to start with these eyes. Now I really want to open them up. I'm going to have some fun with it and really push how big they are. Same thing here. Big, open. And here this comes down. up into the brow. Let's push those brows, the eyebrows up, keeping in mind, simple, right here, simple shapes, okay? Simple lines. There, erase that, there we go. Surprise, we want surprise. Let's put that nose on here, like so, just starting with that ball. And here, look at this. I'm going to turn this on again. Whoops. Turn this on again. Simple mouth shape. See that simple mouth shape? We're going to get into this too. Real simple mouth shapes. Well, if I do that here, watch this. I can go, oh, look how simple that is. Now, that's too simple, but at least that's a place to start. I'm going to throw that on there. Now, as a result of that, I want to pull this face down even more. Let's stretch him out. Pull that chin down in here. Thinking about that jaw's coming down. Now let's throw an iris in here. Now the iris should not stretch because that doesn't apply. You know, you can get the eye shape, the opening to stretch, but you don't want that iris to stretch. And we'll just throw in a little surprise look there. So look how simple. There we go. Throw those ears in again. Boop. Ears always make it. I don't even know if you'd see that ear, but I'll throw it in on that side anyway. And let's give him a little more nostril. Now, I'm going to bring this down. Maybe he's coming back just a little bit. He's kind of jumping backwards, so we can throw his hair back a little. There, something very quick, just for the heck of it. Anything to help kind of magnify that expression. And once again, I'll throw in that ear anatomy, like so. There, he's coming backwards like so. Now, remember, we threw in that very simple mouth shape, and now I can use that as my template to come in. I'm going to come in, and now I'm going to add the details of the mouth, but I want to hold on to the basic shape there. So it comes down, and that mouth is going to come in this way. I'm thinking about the opening of the mouth in perspective. Maybe we see some teeth. See some teeth here. The teeth are going to come back in the mouth like so. Bottom lip. There we go. But I'm keeping it all very simple. There we go. Stretch that facial expression right there. Stretch that eye. The eyes are very, very wide open. Anytime you get the iris completely surrounded by white, like let me get a better one there. Completely surrounded by white, it's gonna denote surprise. It's gonna look like surprise. Okay? It'll always look like surprise. Just get that in there. But the big thing is, keeping those iconic expressions, the very simple, these guys, keeping that in mind always. I know I sound like a broken record, but I want to make sure that that's clear. Because when you can think about that, and like I always do, and sometimes I'll get so caught up, there might be a character where the anatomy is a little bit complex, and I'll get a little too caught up in the anatomy, and then I find myself drawing the anatomy and forgetting about the expression. I'm sure some of you may have experienced that before, and all of a sudden you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, that expression is very muddled. And that's when I go, you know what, I got to step back. I got to go back to those simple shapes. Right now that eye looks a little wonky, so I'm going to erase that. There we go. I drew his iris too big. I'm thinking about perspective too. Well, this iris, it should at least be the same size, if not a little smaller, but the perspective change isn't that much, so it doesn't have to be that much smaller, but it should at least, it shouldn't be bigger. And I want it surrounded by white. There we go. That feels a little better. Thinking about those eyebrows, and the eyelashes, I'm just indicating eyelashes by thick line. That's something you can get away with a lot of times. There we go. And stretching that brow, stretching that nose line, stretching that right out, stretching here, getting that cheek stretched. I want to open that expression up. The one thing I notice a lot of people do, I'm going to show you this in a second. Some people, and actually a lot of people, will do various expressions for their character. And what they neglect to do a lot of times is play with that silhouette, play with that outside shape of the head. A lot of times the shape of the head will stay the same and then everything will change inside, and it's not dynamic enough. But if I turn these on, and I'm going to move this over here, you can see the shape change. This is a bit more squashed, and this is a bit more open as far as the silhouette goes. Think about that sort of thing when you're creating your characters. If you can get your overall shape of the head to change, then it's going to be much more dynamic. I think about that all the time. Matter of fact, I'm going to try something. We might be able to flip back and forth between these two in just a minute, and we'll see how that'll work. But real quick, I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to turn these off. Let's finish this guy up, like so. There we go. Think about all the details, that collar, you've got a little collar coming in, and he might be jumping back. Whoop. There. I'm gonna just throw a quick indication of his ear. Maybe that brow is scrunched up. I'm thinking about it underneath behind the hair. And you can see too, I'm drawing as much as you can. Try to get in the habit of drawing with big, bold strokes. Think about where that line's going to go. I'm always thinking about, okay, where is that line going to go? And then I just try to lay it in. When you do this, that kind of thing, a lot of people do, and that's okay. But first of all, a lot of times the line doesn't have confidence. And when you can get confidence in your lines, it adds clarity to your drawing. And so I do that as much as I can. I try to feel what it is that I'm trying to draw, and I put that into, right now I want him to feel like he's getting thrown back, or he's jumping back a little bit. So I'm kind of feeling that and drawing that in there. Because remember, you can always go back over the top of it if you want to add some clarity to it. But I'll tell you, once you do it, after you do this for a while, the clarity will come in those simple, bold brush strokes or pencil strokes. There we go. Throw that in there like that. Now I want to try something. Let's go ahead, because I want to talk to you a little bit more about that getting shape change. I'm going to take this guy, because they're pretty much the same angle. Let's just go ahead and repeat them. That way I can just turn that one off. And let's go ahead, let's pull him over here. I'm going to change the angle just slightly. And let's make them bigger. Let's get the size of the eyes pretty much. I'm going to, whoops. Let's get him right in here somewhere. It's not going to be perfect because I didn't draw right over the top of him, so it's going to change a little bit, but it's going to be close. So I'm going to turn that off, and let's go ahead and I'm going to put these in a folder. I'm going to put a layer in between. So now if I turn this off and on, it's not perfect because, like I said, we didn't draw over the top of it, but you can get a sense. See how the form, that shape is changing. We're getting, it opens up and stretches. You get a little bit of animation happening just between the two drawings. Don't look at the hair because it's two different ideas, but just look at that face, and you can see, especially in the jaw and the cheeks, you want to think about really making those parts of the head, not so much the cranium, but the face, making it malleable. And like I said, try to avoid keeping the same form and just changing the inside, because a lot of people fall into that. But I always think about it, I come at it from an animator standpoint, which is really moving things around. And that history that I have in animation has helped me with that. And so the more you can think like this, the more dynamic your expressions will be, okay? So think about silhouette change, and that will help your expressions. There. So let's turn these off again, and how about let's do another one. Let's go ahead and do sad. So we've done happy, angry, surprise. All right. So let's do sad. Same thing. All right. Start with that circle. Always start with my construction. Start with that circle. Now maybe he's looking down. He's sad. I'm thinking about that form. And maybe the brow comes down here. Those ears are going to be up in here. Slumping shoulders. Think about everything. Everything's working together. Let's slump his shoulders down. Already you can start to feel sadness in just this little bit that we've put in here. And draw that nose, but looking at it from slight down angle, down shot. So what does sad look like? Well, if we draw, going back to our regular face, let's do our eyes, nose. There, sad, right? Simple. Well, let's do the same thing. I'm going to get those brows scrunching up. Get these eyes in here like so. And let's just do that. Let's just add that scrunchy little mouth like so. Thinking about that. Let's throw in some hair. Thinking about big shapes. See how quick, just keeping things very quick. Let's flop it. There we go. I want to bring this down, maybe bring this up a little bit. There we go. Now, where do we want to put the iris? Well, maybe he's looking, he's kind of looking up kind of sheepishly, but he's sad. And I always tend to kind of get into the emotion as I'm drawing. There we go. But very simple. See how I'm keeping these shapes, there's certain icons within the face that denote an expression. You got eyebrows, you got mouth. Keeping those simple will keep that expression clear. And here we go, very quickly, we've just drawn a little sad face. Just like so. Let's turn it back to where it was. Draw his eyelashes in there. There we go. Draw his lip in here like so. All of a sudden he feels sad. There we go. So this is what I think about when I'm drawing expression. I think of, and it doesn't, here we're just doing a kid. All of this applies to any character you're drawing, okay? So let's go ahead and knock that opacity down. And once again, if we want to go in there and tie him down, like I do want to tie it down. I'm thinking about that brow kind of being pushed together. Bringing his eyebrows down. Maybe draw them this way. There we go. Same thing here. Coming up like so. This plane comes down. There's the break. This is where basically where the nasal cavity is underneath. So even still with this cartoony character, I'm thinking about anatomy. There we go. Think about, I'm going to draw this back a little bit because I'm thinking about perspective. The eyes sit on that, so the nostril should sit on the same perspective. So this nostril should come up a little bit. There we go. And this part of the nostril is up a little high. Yes, I know it's a little detailed, but it adds to the final look, and so I want to make sure it's right. There we go, and keeping, maybe we scrunch up that corner of the mouth a little bit. There, little pouty lip, like so. Now let's get this cheek in, nice and simple. Right into that chin, nice and simple. Remember, if you want to draw young, keep your line work simple. There. I'm going to have the bottom of the eye kind of droopy. I want to mimic that sad feel, even in the shape of the eye. There we go. I was casting a shadow over the top of his eye, just a little bit there. There we go. Let's do the same thing over here. We'll draw this eye in. See, once again, I want you to keep in mind when you do all the work in your rough, keeping things rough, don't go to detail right away. Then you can sit down and do what I'm doing here, which is just kind of relax and just kind of draw. Draw that shadow going across the eye. There we go. There we go. Just like so. Oh, he's feeling sad. Draw this ear in. Thinking about that ear anatomy, if you've seen my videos, I do a whole video on the ears, just talking about ears, making sure you get that anatomy right. When you know all those details, then you can apply it to your character design work, which is what I do. A lot of people, they do character design, but they don't think about the anatomy that they're trying to get across. And the more knowledge you have, the more you can caricature that knowledge. And that's what I try to get across in explaining, when I teach character design, You know, when you have real world knowledge of anatomy, do figure drawing, draw people at the parks, you can apply that to your character drawing. There, so now, very quickly, we've got a little sad kid. Let's draw that, bring that up in here. There. There we go. So there he is. He's sad, but really going off of this feel right here. Let's turn these on. So there's 4 drawings that kind of get across. We could go on for hours and hours and hours talking about different expressions, but think about those basic shapes underneath. When you're drawing those expressions, the biggest thing, think about those really simple icons. Think about, you know, these faces, the happy face, the things that people doodle on their papers. When you can get that simplicity into the complexity of a character design, that's when it starts getting clear. That's when, you know, you've got an expression that reads and people understand what that character is feeling, because ultimately that's what you want the world to feel when they see your work. You want them to feel what your character is feeling. You're trying to give your character emotion. And the only way to get that emotion across clearly is to make it simple, and then that simple equates to clear, okay? So why don't we go ahead and jump on to the next video.